very pragmatic ways of permitting other means for holding of retentions monies. It's a great piece of legislation, Mr Speaker. I commend it to the House.
Meka Whaitiri.
E te manga te whare tēnā koe o te ranga me mo te whare nei tēnā tātou katoa. Mr Speaker, I'm pleased to take a call on this, the third reading of the Regulatory Systems Building and Housing Amendment Bill, the Regulatory Systems Commercial Matters Amendment Bill, the Regulatory Systems Workplace Relations Amendment Bill, and say Labor supports the third and final reading of these bills, sir. Just to remind us, these are three omnibus bills, or regulatory bills, amended to maintain and improve the effectiveness and efficiency of our regulatory systems, Mr Speaker. It can include policy changes that involve continuous improvements to repairs and maintenance of regulatory systems, but not significant policy changes. And it also differs from statute amendment bills, those that are designed for technical, short and non-controversial amendments. Sir, as a member of the hardest working Select Committee, the Local Government and Environment Select Committee, I'm going to focus my contribution on the Building and Housing Bill, sir. And just note that through the and say that we had a very robust committee stage, sir. We were allowed to debate not only part by part, but every single bill separate from each other. And I do want to note that, in particular to the Building and Housing Amendment Bill, we had one amendment to the Building Act 2006, which was really about clarifying the role of the Territory Authority. But the substantive amendments of this particular bill, sir, was in the second part of the Unit Titles Act 2010, where we saw 16 amendments. And 16 amendments, sir, were to address or were related to clarification and improvements in unit plans, in body corporate operational rules, and reassessment of ownership and utility interests, registration of easements and covenants, and leases and licences of common property, and extraordinary general meetings. But, sir, what I want to raise in my contribution is three particular submitters who I believe raised very important issues through the Select Committee process, but found themselves outside the scope of this particular bill. And I do want to note them because I think these submitters, as I share what they said, will come quite clear to members of this House. And the first submission, sir, was presented from the Property Council of New Zealand. And essentially, they raised issues, although they supported the bill, in relation to the second part of this bill under the Unit Titles Act, sir. They felt we could have gone a bit broader in terms of addressing issues like dispute resolution or introducing a dispute resolution regime. They talked extensively about a guidance material made available to body corporates, the provisions around stage developments, particularly as clearly we have a housing shortage in this country, and we want to ensure that if we want to build, we want to remove barriers around stage development, about the default body corporate operational rules, sir, and the process that must be followed when a unit title development is split into two or more separate developments. And so here's obviously an organisation like the Property Council New Zealand that saw an opportunity to submit to the Select Commission to enhance the regulatory systems around building and housing. And unfortunately, like I said, sir, it was found to be out of scope. The second submitter, sir, was Auckland Council. Now, Auckland Council, sir, were asking for an extension of a wider review, and I'll touch on later that there is currently a broader review of the Units Title Act.
Order. When you're in a third reading speech, anything that's been ruled out of scope in the committee stage cannot be debated in substance. You can mention it, but you can't go into detail about it. And I'll just refer you to Speaker's Rulings 137.1, and it says here, any matter not included in clause of the bill, a clause that's been ruled out of order, or the merits of the amendments have been ruled out in committee, cannot be debated. So you can mention them, but don't go into substance. Meka Whaitiri.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. So in mentioning the Auckland City Council around proposing I guess an anomaly between the Unit Titles Act and the RMA, seeking clarity around that. And the third one, sir, was the Transpower submission that talked about NZECP 34 around houses built under Transpower lines. Sir, the reason why I just wanted to draw the House's attention to that goes into my previous point around the Units Titles Act Review 2016, sir, which talks about a more comprehensive review of this particular Act. And so I mention it because I thought that was an opportunity for I guess, to either take on board some of the submissions that submitters had put in to ensure that the review that is currently going on will perhaps factor some of the concerns that people like Auckland Council, Transpower and, of course, the Property Council were raising through this particular process, sir. Because when I look at the purpose of mending these regulatory systems, it is about improving our systems. And so my only mention about that was it would have been nice to have heard from the Minister at the time, and I did ask where we're up to with that review, to give some assurances that people were making, I think, very useful submissions to the submission process was getting heard by the government. Sir, I only wanted to raise that because I think we have got an opportunity here in front of us to make sure that our regulatory systems in relation to building and housing is at its most fit for purpose for now, sir, and as we go into the future. And I do want to note that even though these amendments have been part of an ongoing commitment from the government, which we support, the review and the timing of the review happening while we are passing third legislation, for me, just threw up a lot of lost opportunities in which we could have lined up the review with the reading of these regulatory system bills that we have here today, sir. So happy again that we are supporting the attempt by the government to make our regulatory systems fit for purpose, sir. My point was that I think in terms of the housing and building one, there was potentially a lost opportunity, and I do hope that the Minister in charge of the broader Unit Titles Act review does take on board those comments from the submitters that took the time out to submit. I commend this bill to the House.
Dr. Palmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.